Okay, folks, this is continuing in a lot of ways recent videos. Yesterday, we were at a very tiny Black Lives Matter demonstration. I'm going to get to that from my living room, place-based, right? I'm going to talk about some important thinkers. These are the bookshelves that I've been getting to. Very interesting kind of Art Deco what do you call it? Hemicylinder, semi-cylinder, half of a cylinder cut long ways, you could call it. It's not something I picked out or had installed. It was here when we moved in the 90s, okay? But just zooming in a little bit and a little bit more, it's a little bit blurry, but you can see the Synergetics Dictionary there in 4 volumes. That was put together by Ed Applewhite, and I've talked about him quite a bit, and I want to talk about another Bucky collaborator again today, someone I've talked about before as well, and that's Kiyoshi Kuramiya. And how are we going to get to his story? Well, interesting, right? It's important to trace some of these links. I guess Robert Moses, I'll throw that out. And the story of our family, like my dad was an urban planner, and I think coming from an activist background in Chicago, wanting to be on the side of Baird Rustin, whom he admired, and who was a friend of Stokely Carmichael, right? We're going to get to him too, because of my viewing history on YouTube. So we're going backwards through my living room. That's the Kenneth Nelson I meant to. He made these really simple ones. This is for my daughter, you know. Continuing here. Okay, here it is bigger. It's very simple, right? Tensegrity is, we're going to get to that too, actually. Let me jump to YouTube, since this is the moment to do that, talking about tensegrity. Here we are back at my viewing history, and here's the link to Defunct Land. Like, I've been talking about the New York World's Fair of 1964 intensively, referencing the Defunct Land channel, and now here we've got the Tower of Light Tensegrity by Snelson. T.C. Howard, the engineer. Now, I've known about T.C. Howard for a long time, never did meet him. Remember, my generation comes later. I'm alive during the 64 World's Fair in New York, but I never get to it because I'm living closer to Seattle, so I go to the Seattle World's Fair. And Seattle Center is still there. It has since been augmented by Paul Allen's Museum of Rock and Roll. Is that what it's called? No, it's called something like The Experience. What's it called? Anyway, there's also the Museum of Science Fiction in the same building. Very worth seeing, at least it was to me. Okay, so scrolling back, we've got this, listen to this last night after I made the video yesterday. And we're talking about former President...
You do it every year.
Let's turn this off. Former President Bill Clinton's address at the funeral for John Lewis, right? And he said something about Stokely Carmichael in his eulogy. Let's skip ads and all this. Happy white people, right? Well, that's fine. I'm talking about white people because the topic is now suddenly racism again. And how this all ties together, this was an interview with this professor who knows a lot about Stokely Carmichael. These were the people around Dr. King, and they were, like you could say first tier. Baird Rustin, especially, who I said was influential on my dad. Now, in that same mix, but also gay, so like Baird was out. He was out, but the civil rights movement wasn't. It wasn't ready for that kind of movement yet, right? That wasn't it. The culture wars wasn't about that yet. Although civil rights, right, you would say it's coming. So, Kiyoshi and Stokely Carmichael, see, I don't know the details of his bio. I hung out with him some because he's a #1 for Bucky Fuller too, right? Adjuvant on the cover of Critical Path. And I just want to sort of pull it together and say, isn't it interesting that what we're calling a very radical left person, I guess we're saying, the Stokely Carmichael, and Clinton is like chastising or saying, at least we didn't go that route, right? We kind of stuck kind of mainstream as he wanted to appear, right? And this other way of going, as this professor points out, is off the deep end in a way, you could say, in that it stays anti-imperialist, kind of Mark Twain-y in that sense, which is not mainstream. We are this manifest destiny, we being the mainstream enterprise that has built-in exceptionalism, as we've discussed, ethnocentrism, whatever. So I think that kind of ties it together with the Robert Moses approach of just kind of mowing out neighborhoods with freeways. And I think my dad wanted to get away from that kind of urban planning and the kind of the sort of fascistic overtone, the white supremacy overtone you had going with that. And he was glad to get work with Libya after this, his first chapter in Portland. Raising a middle-class family, sampling what that was going to be like. It was a lot of fun, you know, me, my sister, my mom, a nuclear family in a nice suburban home right outside the city limit. He knew where that was. So we had a good middle-class life started, but he was wanting to see the world and have adventure and not be weighed down by this reality of, you know, being who he was, because who he was actually was an adventurer who had gone through this PhD program at University of Chicago in order to work in developing countries. So yeah, he jumped at the opportunity, would be my way of seeing it, when the Libya offer came by, right? So I'm going backwards in time. No, that's forwards. Backwards is the other way, right? We're going through the Snelson thing. So there was a Snelson exhibit at the New York World's Fair. Remember that. It was all about the Tower of Light. Now, I think when he befriended me, and I'll put it how that's kind of how it went, he reached out to me because I had one of the first websites on Synergetics as soon as it became practical to do and share color pictures on the web, right? You'll recognize these slides from last time, okay? I always think about, check it out when I see this. You might know the reference, Dr. Steve Brule, comedian, you could say. That's the character he plays. So we're going back to tie it off together at the Black Lives Matter demonstration, because here in Portland, for example, the Memorial Coliseum, which was put up next to what now is called the Moda Center, which is an even bigger thing that Paul Allen helped. Wait, who financed that originally? Anyway, that whole part of town used to be more like, you could call it low-income housing or affordable housing, or it was kind of like, you know, you didn't have to be rich to live there. It wasn't like well-to-do, but you need that in the city, right? Who's going to do all this like menial work? And like that's the attitude, right? So then they bulldozed that whole place to make the Coliseum, and that was what we called urban renewal, which in the U.S. kind of just means mow away these things and replace them with these other things. And I don't think my dad was really into doing that or wanting to participate, and he was against certain freeway projects here in Portland. Like he was not, when I say he's an urban planner, you might have a stereotype, oh, he's one of those guys who just rams freeways through neighborhoods. And I'm thinking, no, that's what he was trying to get away from, right? That was like something to not encourage. Planning doesn't have to mean anything in particular. It doesn't have to mean, it just means anticipating the future in some way. In an intelligent way, we hope. All right? So I just wanted to tie all those threads together. I hope that was interesting. Kiyoshi Kuramiya, mix him in other words, we're trying to expand to get more of our civil rights history and going through that era. And I'm saying reach back through Kiyoshi Kuramiya to Stokely Carmichael and to the Black Panthers and stuff like that. Like, that's your road backwards, right, through Kyoshi. And then realize that Bucky Fuller, why is his math not taught? I mean, it's so simple. Let me just end with that, right? It's just mnemonics, right? I can help you remember. Call this a cube octahedron, give it a volume of 20, 18.51 dot dot dot. You can use phi to get the volume of it. And then octahedron is 4, you got a cube of 3, and your tetrahedron is 1. Okay, I don't know if you saw all that. Shout out to Very Large Array. That's New Mexico. This is a very old shirt. I don't really wear it outside because it's got too many holes in it. Anyway, Volume 1. Volume 1. Can't teach that. No, it's been decided. Now, who decided not to teach that, given how simple it is? It doesn't conflict with any existing math. You can keep all the math you have and then have a new thing that like helps you jump around faster. Speeds you up. So I could push it. I do push it. I do pep talks about it. So I teach it, free to do that. It's not a problem. It's just no one else. Now, is it a, I mean, others do. Okay, we're a subculture. But we hit the bump of, oh, you're just disciples or it's a cult. And it's like, it's a cult. Okay, it's a cult. All right, now what? What do we say next? Okay, cults. All right. Getting closer to, I don't know, getting closer to becoming a history channel in a lot of ways. So if you're going to be a cult, come up with a way to impart world history to people who want to be in that cult, I guess is what I'm saying. Conspiracy is another word. All right. Marshall McLuhan, when he first met Bucky, he said, I've read your books and I'm ready to join your conspiracy. And they did hang out quite a bit. And Bucky thought he was a lot of fun. Although Fuller was, like, he had a bow tie and a business suit and he didn't act up. Whereas Kyoshi and their strategies were much more like in-your-face kind of circus animals, whereas Bucky was always kind of buttoned down. But I would argue a radical, and therefore his math is verboten, not because it's not good math, but because he's too scary in some dimension. Don't know. Tell me if I'm wrong in the comments below, and hit subscribe. Just thought I'd say that. All right, talk to y'all.